In order to get us started, I want to introduce Natalie Molina Nino, who is the founder of Entrepreneurs at Athena and who has created a very similar boot camp for entrepreneurs that we used this summer for the last 3 years here at Barnard to create businesses that changed the world. We gave the program for Girl Scouts and now offer it as part of the pre-college program. Natalie, it's all yours.
Bravo! Okay, so normally the introductions are just that thing that you do before you get into the actual questions, but we have tech women who were once tech girls. So I feel like what we're going to do is the humble brag without the humble. So we're just going to brag, and we're going to talk about what we do, how we got here, what our origin story is. And Christina, I'm going to make you go first.
What we do. So during the day, I work at Morgan Stanley in the technology and data. I do information security. This sounds really weird. I do information security. And at night, I work on a couple of initiatives for women of color in tech. I work with Black Girls Code. I'm developing a couple of projects on my own, and I have 3 kids.
That's all. One of the projects happens to be that Christina and a partner noticed that in addition to there being very little stock photography of women doing tech, if you try to look for women of color doing tech, finding a brown woman with a keyboard anywhere within 5 miles of her seems to be tough. And so what Christina did is she got together a bunch of friends, they shot stock photography and gave it away free to the world.
Awesome.
You use it. You have. Okay. Jada?
Hi, I'm Jada. So during the day, I'm a student here at Barnard. At night, I work on Athena Digital Design. I co-founded that with Natalie my sophomore year. I'm a senior now. Dear God, it's crazy. And I also work on a couple of
What is Athena Digital Design?
Sorry. Athena Digital Design is a web development agency here on campus. We educate women in code and just kind of help them along their way, learning coding in a really informal setting. And then we also have an agency afterwards, which they can join. They can make money kind of putting those tools to use, which is great. And then at night, I work on a number of startups. I freelance all different types of things. And I'm going to Goldman Sachs and doing technology there in July. So, thank you.
And she helped me run the summer camp 2 summers ago?
2 summers ago.
Yep.
So I'm the CEO of Power to Fly. We are a network connecting women in tech from all over the world to companies that are invested in diversity. I've been at it for about 2 years. Had the pleasure of working on it with Natalie last year as well. She joined us for over half a year, and it was just a great ride together. I have 3 kids as well, the oldest of which is sitting on the front row, and I'm slightly terrified. I've never spoken in front of her. And she's the one who came up with the name Power to Fly. In a letter to Santa. So I have a young woman in tech in the making here, I think. And prior to Power to Fly, I was a chief technology officer for a global nonprofit, Avaz.org. Some of you may know it. It's very much like MoveOn or Change.org, but global with over 40 million members now. And I feel like I was one of those stories of hope of women in tech with 3 children remaining in tech, partially because Avaz was really a distributed organization from day one, and so I could breastfeed the baby while solving a server crisis, right? So that was the inspiration for Power to Fly, really, and for the journey I'm on right now.
And when I stepped down, there were 60,000 women in 140 countries on the platform?
Yeah.
Where is it now?
77,000, yeah, so.
So I am not a woman in tech. I am a woman that Natalie invited here because I love women in tech. I am a woman in Hollywood, and I'm a producer of film and television at Anonymous Content. We produce the TV show Mr. Robot and The Revenant and Spotlight, which are nominated for Academy Awards. And Natalie and I were putting our heads together very recently and decided we were going to start developing a half-hour comedy about girls who code. And she asked me to come here and tell you guys that. But I just, my sister's an engineer. My niece is back there. She's a freshman at Cooper Union. She's an engineer. My best friend, Nim, who graduated Barnard with me 20 years ago, is a scientist too. And I think that there are just not enough women in STEM in film and television. And I feel lucky to be at a really powerful company in Hollywood where I can bring more women like you into popular culture so that more little girls are naming Power to Fly. So that's why I'm here, to learn more about all of you.
Well, and because we, I think, are all in agreement that we're not going to hold our breath, that there's such an infrequency of women on the cover of Fast Company and tech magazines and so on. We're just not featured, and so we need people like you to be a part of that equation, right? Mm-hmm. Can't be what you can't see. Which brings me to the next question in terms of role models. We often talk about certain coding languages as the gateway drug into coding, but I think people and role models can kind of be the gateway drug into the space as well. And so we wanted to cover who was your gateway drug inspiration, whatever you want to call it.
My uncle, surprisingly enough, he studied. So my family's originally from the Dominican Republic, and they migrated here before I was born. When my mom was like 5 or 13, my uncle was like 5. So he's the baby brother, and he actually was the only one to finish college. He became an engineer, an electrical engineer, and then he's worked with the MTA, with Con Edison. So I would always see like little bits and pieces of stuff in the house, and math books and Encyclopedia Britannica. Yes, I'm old. And so like I was very curious, and I would ask him questions, but also he has sickle cell anemia, so I would also witness his pain, and him fighting through the pain, and him becoming the only successful person in my family till today. Well, I'm successful too, but whatever. I'll give it to him. And he was my biggest inspiration. So like I just kind of wanted to follow in his footsteps and make him, be proud of me as well.
So you were actually my inspiration.
Oh.
So I came into college thinking I was going to be pre-med neuroscience and go try and be an orthopedic surgeon for the NFLPS, the National Football League. She's laughing at me. I'm obsessed with football. It's casual side note. But so I came in thinking that's what I wanted to do. And 3 weeks in, I realized I hated biology. I hated science. I was like, this is awful. I can't do this for several more years. And I ended up going to kind of a leadership lab, which is kind of a mini like fireside chat with a professional in an area. So it was Natalie, and she was talking about entrepreneurship. And I guess I was kind of a defiant kid. When adults kind of spoke to me, I never really listened to them. I was kind of like, okay, you were in a different generation. But it was kind of the first time that I was listening to an adult, and I was like, that's really cool. Like, I want to be like her. And she was talking about how she was 19 and she like started her first company, and I think I was 17 at the time, and I was like, I could do that. And so it was just kind of, listening to her speak, and then kind of like weaseled my way into like a mentee role there, and it's been great ever since. And I think that was kind of my biggest role model as far as entrepreneurship and like getting me involved in this space. When it comes to technology, I feel like it's a little bit harder because you see like Mark Zuckerberg, you see Bill Gates, and I personally, as like a Black woman, can't identify with those individuals, and so I feel like on the tech and coding side, I really haven't had that inspiration there. So,
thank you.
Wow. So for me, I'm trying to put the puzzle back together in my mind a little bit. On one hand, my mom was one of the first people who studied computer engineering in Bulgaria in the 1970s. She didn't become a computer science though after that. So, but there is something in that story. And on the other hand, my grandfather was always talking about how you have to be an engineer, you have to be an engineer who speaks foreign languages, and somehow, I think despite me going for a business undergrad, like that respect for engineering really came in my brain. And it was really through my decision that business sucks and I'm never going to do business again, that I went totally like as a pendulum in the other direction of I'm going to be an artist. One thing led to another, and I went to ITP at NYU here, which was truly my gateway drug into technology. Like walking into the program, you see a mirror that's made out of wood, and like all kind of, like I did very crazy projects there, 15 years ago, things like with wearable computing, with, responsive musical instruments, nothing at all with, what I'm doing today, but in a way that really led me into that, onto that path and into the right circles with the right people, so that I can be where I am today. So, code robots.
I want to hear Natalie's story if we're allowed.
But you don't get away with not answering.
Oh, my gateway
What's
drug
your gateway
into
drug into being interested in tech?
Well, it would start with my sister, who was, probably the first beautiful girl engineer I ever saw. And then she got my niece, her daughter, to become an engineer, and then I married a robotic scientist, and I had a little baby who was running around the Jet Propulsion Lab looking at the Mars rover replica saying, "Hi, Robot, how are you?" And who, wanted to be Honey Lemon from Big Hero 6 for Halloween, and I couldn't find a good costume because I had a 3-year-old who wanted to be a robotic scientist superhero for Halloween and had to put it together myself. So those are the reasons that I want to make women in tech more accessible, and that's my experience with tech.
My gateway drug was a motorcycle and a motorcycle accident. It was my only form of transportation in grad school, and I had learned to code just because it was a way to put myself through college. And it was by bartering. All I had when I sold the motorcycle after an accident was the cash that I had earned from selling it. And so I went to a dingy old used car sales lot, and I offered the owner half of what a Jeep Cherokee was worth in cash, and for the other half, I promised him I'd make him a website. And that was the first time I realized that this silly little skill that I'd learned was actually worth something. And then a little bit later, a business came out of it. And that was it. I would love to know what your favorite scene in the movie is and why.
You have to start with me.
Jada.
So I think one of the scenes that I identified with the most was, I think it was the team from Brazil who were saying how you can't be what you can't see. And I think that really, for me, has been the hardest part about being a CS major and kind of going into this field, specifically like not having the role model, like I mentioned before, for technology, but also I think with Athena Digital Design and also a couple of other initiatives on campus, such as we have the Barnard Computer Science Help Room, we have a couple of other groups that we do, but I think it was kind of creating a community here on campus because I couldn't see someone like me who was doing what I wanted to do. So instead, I kind of surrounded myself with people who were doing it. And one of my other co-founders, Monica, who is a black woman who's a senior, and she's really involved with technology, even though she's not a computer science major. It's awesome because now she'll send me texts and she's like, coding tonight? And we just sit in my room and we'll code for hours. And we'll start at like 10 p.m. and we'll go until 3 in the morning. I'm like, wait, we have class at 8:40. Okay, we gotta cut this off. But I think I really identified with that piece, and for me that was kind of really strong and stuck with me.
So I just want to say one thing before I say what my favorite scene was, because I really enjoyed the movie, but what I want to tell the young people that are here, and even the older folks, or more experienced folks, let's say that, is that you don't have to code if you don't want to. Don't let this whole tech ecosystem and the pressure of learn to code, like overwhelm you. You do not have to learn to code, right? It's a skill and it's another language, just like if you only speak English, you know, you may not get a job where you're going to translate, right? So if you know how to speak French and Spanish, you may get a better job with more money. So it's the same with coding, right? But technology and coding is a tool, right? So you're going to use your love and your passion and whatever you like to do. If you like to cook, fine. How can you marry cooking with technology? So technology is just your vehicle. Don't get consumed by having to learn to code, because I see that it's being like almost like penetrated into our brains, and not everybody wants to code, and not everyone has the aptitude to code. And by the way, there are other positions in technology that not many people speak of, right? So one of the projects that I'm working on is to build a tech ecosystem map, which is live and will show you all of the different positions within the tech ecosystem. So I want a visual version of this so that everyone can see. There are QA, there's IT security, which is what I do. And although I do have to learn how to code just because I'm a lifelong student, that was my preference, not by pressure. So please, if there's one thing that you can take from this is that it's more of the problem-solving experience and applying technology on top of it. So leveraging technology as a tool, okay? So I don't want anyone to become overwhelmed or to overwhelm your kids. Give them the space, right? So I can't pick one favorite part. I have to say that the movie in general, I hadn't seen it before on purpose because I wanted to wait till today. But it really inspired me because the one thing that I have to say that I enjoyed was seeing women work together and come together to solve a problem. I think that in a lot of industries, and maybe Hollywood is the same, women, we don't support each other enough, right? Despite what you may hear. So I think that seeing women collaborate and kind of put egos and everything aside just motivated me, just with all the teams, not necessarily with one team. So I have to say that was like my favorite part.
What you said makes me actually curious. We're going to pivot to another question, which is we are all aligned, and I think one of the things that we all share in common is that we're actively doing something in a space to sort of leave it better than we found it. And, the news can sometimes be negative. It can be kind of a downer. But I think we all start to think and focus on what the end game is for us, and what, if I see this, then I know that it will have gotten better. And I know that it's going to be a more welcoming place for the generations that come after, and I have, sort of done my part. And so I'm curious to know here, what's your thing? What's the, when I see this, I will feel like things are the way that I have always wanted them to be in this space. Who wants to go first?
I guess for me it would be equal opportunity. Like when I see that people are not so much complaining about the problem, but taking action and solving the issue. I think when I see more solutions and less problems, although I do think talking about things is important, but I feel like I want that to be 10%. So when we get to a place where I see that people are like, oh, there's this problem, but here's a solution, right? And the solution is like the focal point, I'll be like, okay, this is good, right? Whether it's through code or not code, but when I see people having more of that producer mindset, right, and not consumer, like not take, but like let me contribute, let me solve this problem, that's when I'll be able to like sit down.
And I do take the point about not necessarily having to code. We had a speaker right at the first graduation of Athena Digital Design say that saying that a company is tech-enabled these days is a little bit like saying my restaurant comes equipped with plumbing. Like, obviously, come on. Yeah. Like, we don't say that anymore. So no matter what you aspire to be, that's something where, Jada's mission and the colleagues that Jada works with is very different than some of the other organizations out there that have a commendable goal of getting more women in computer science. What's slightly different about Athena Digital Design and what Jada is doing is she doesn't have that as a goal. Be a theater major. Be whatever it is you want to be. But guess what? We're going to teach you to code too. Right. So your end game?
Did you go for me? Okay, so, well, obviously, at Part of Fly, we're very dedicated on changing the nature of work. And what we interpret it like is people should be free to work from wherever it makes sense for their lives. This is still very much an uphill battle that we're, threading against, what enterprises out there think workplaces should be like, or, what they were like in the last century. So that's one thing that I'd like to see change in 20 years, where it truly doesn't matter when you work for a company, are you clocking in from home or from the office or from the coffee shop in the way people work together, because I really think it's going to make a long-lasting change in people's lives, not just for women, but especially for women, especially in our childbearing years. And the other thing I'd like to see change is, it's a tricky one, so I think it's going to be even longer to get there. But it's the unconscious bias, right? Like, again, our Power to Fly profiles are very much, this is your photo, this is your life story, this is who you are in real life. And I'm of the belief that really matters, and that's why we build a platform that way. But so many people say, yeah, but when I see this photo, I'm not going to hire her because she's too fat or too old or not white enough, or I don't care, and so those biases are still very much a reality in our interview process, right? Like I observe hundreds of interview processes every week, and they're very much a reality, and I can't wait to see a world without them, where you're really going to hire somebody for who they are or what they can do, and not for what they look like or where they came from or what they have access to. Yeah.
Melina, my answer is very similar to yours. I just want to see more women in power, more women of color in power, and more women who didn't come from, I'm not a woman of color, but Natalie calls me an honorary Latina, partially because I'm, from a working class family and put myself through Barnard and commuted here from Yonkers, which
no,
is
it's because
not
of the
glamorous.
Selena Gomez singing.
What?
It's because of your Selena Gomez singing.
Oh.
That's why. That's why.
No, the real Selena, the first Selena, I can sing. Selena Gomez, though, I do have a project with, and she's lovely. But they're different women.
My Latina card just got pulled.
No, but I think, unconscious bias is something that we've all been talking a lot about this weekend and always. And in my business, I feel like we're given the power to create something that looks a certain way in popular culture that will help reflect the culture. And I take that very seriously. I just put together a show for Netflix, and in hiring the writer's room, we were very, very clear that we wanted this room to be diverse. And once we got that room together, and I'm pretty sure we're the first 1-hour drama that will be run by a Korean American woman. We have, 3 African American writers in the room. It's a really diverse room. And to have Netflix say to me and our creator on the phone, we are so impressed and thank you, because you were so open and clear about how important it was for the writer's room to be diverse. And that's the only way that we're going to create media that reflects the audience that's watching, And so to me, that's the end game, is for people to look at, what was the thing that the little girl said in the movie that you just quoted that I loved? You can't be what you can't see. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So my end game, I think a lot about the younger generation, because I got into computer science my senior year of high school, and I think a lot of young kids, and just maybe our society at large, is really media-driven and celebrity-driven. And I love reading Vogue and Cosmo, and I get all the newsletters. And it's been interesting to see where they're now highlighting, like, Evan Spiegel's dating Miranda Kerr or something, and Evan Spiegel's the CEO of Snapchat. And there was another thing where it was some Tumblr executive's wedding was in Vogue, and I'm like, wow, these tech people are now like the new celebrities. And so I think for me, the end game would be, majority of the people who I click on are white men. And I think seeing more diverse people, especially because they are kind of the new celebrities, they are kind of these new rock stars, and younger kids are starting to hear about them. It would be great if they could hear about a diverse population.
So is it inappropriate if my end game is to see who you're dating in Vogue?
No, not at all. That'd be great.
Okay, we want to open it up to questions, or maybe just wrap it up with one last question from me. I would like to know what you think, whether you're in technology, whether you're a coder or not a coder or not remotely in the space, but still feel like it's an important part of our culture and part of our economy. What would you say to someone is the one thing that they can do, the most effective thing that they can do to make a difference in changing the ratio in our industry?
To listen. Listen to us. Listen to other people's perspective. You don't have to be best friends. You don't have to necessarily agree, but you can respectfully disagree, but listen. I think a lot of times, a lot of these diversity initiatives and a lot of, white women, white males, they want to help, but they don't listen. Like, she may be doing some Hollywood stuff, but she cannot tell my story. Only I can tell my story. So the way that she can help and be a better ally to people of color or women or non-binary people or, LGBT people or whoever, it's not only about, color, but is to listen to us, right? So I think that's one of the most important.
I think be supportive, be a mentor, be helpful. I've had a lot of students, first years and sophomores, who send me emails, hey, can we grab coffee? I'm interested in this computer science, but I really don't know where to start. I don't know what classes to take, what professors. And there's so few of us. I think my year, we have maybe 12 out of 600. And when I came in, there were only 5 seniors graduating as computer science majors. I think also, just in the same vein of being supportive, when I first started, I took an AP computer science class my senior year of high school, and the professor walked in the first day and was like, there were 3 women, and he was like, why are you guys here? Like, this is a man's sport, why are you in the classroom? And I honestly think I'm probably a computer science major because of that man. I was just so angry, and I wanted to just keep going. But that one girl dropped before winter break, and the other girl just gave up, and he gave us both C- in the class and refused to teach us, refused everything. So I think that's why I try and be so helpful when I get these emails and I get people who are coming up to me and asking me just questions. I just feel like I need to help because I had that experience. But I think people say so many things that they don't realize, kind of unconscious bias, but they just say things that they don't realize are not supportive and are not helpful. So just kind of keeping that in mind.
I hate that story. I cringe every time I hear it. I'm glad that you keep telling it. But I also, every time that you do tell it, I piggyback off of it because a colleague of Jada's, who's in the same class?
She's a junior.
A junior? Yeah. Okay, 1 year younger. Made it into an op-ed that I wrote for Time.com because she had a very similar experience. We want to believe these are the exceptions. We want to believe that this is a thing of the past. But a colleague of Jada had a similar experience where she was the only African American in her class. She was the only woman in her AP computer science class in high school. And when midterms rolled around, she absolutely killed her midterm. She aced it. And she finished faster than anyone else in her class. And she was accused of cheating. It is not a rare thing. It is something that happens every day. And so I would just echo the supportive and the listening because it's happening all the time. And it's the rest of us that have to lift up these students to make sure that they persist despite all of these things.
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people that my story is a story of hope. And so amidst all the stories of horror that we hear, I think it is important to keep telling the stories of hope, right? Because they're the ones that anchor us and say, there is a way to beat this, that there is a way forward, this is what worked for me, I hope it works for you. Mm-hmm. And my story very much of hope is very much anchored around, my boss being agnostic to where I work from and allowing remote work. So if I have to leave you with one thing, I'm sorry to bang my own drum, but I'll say allow women to work remotely whenever they ask for it, because sometimes they might want to prefer to come to the office, right? But whenever they ask for it, allow them, because you might be able to retain them a lot longer by allowing for that flexibility.
I forgot what the question was.
What can we do? By the way, the success story of both of those is that both Jordan and Jada have persisted and are still very involved in tech, despite all the odds. What is the one thing that you would suggest people do to help change the ratio in the industry?
You know, I feel like for a long time in my industry and in a lot of competitive industries, women, it was kind of like trying to find an apartment in Manhattan. Like you felt like there's only one seat for a girl in the conference room, and it created competition among women. And I think that what I've learned as I got older, and especially when you have a baby for the first time and you don't have a job where you can work remotely and you are off the floor, it's like you're still a car salesman, right? If you're not on the floor, you're not selling as many cars as the boys who have wives who stay at home or who have, and to join forces with other women, if you're the only 2 at your company, if you're the only 4 at your company, it is so powerful. I turned to one of my colleagues a few weeks ago and said, let's go after this book together, because the truth is you have 3 kids, I have 1, and in terms of being exclusive to be on set, we could work in tandem, and we could get more movies and TV made if we have a secret, agreement that we can work in tandem. And the other women at the company, some of them I felt maybe from earlier generations where Hollywood was a little bit different, are sharing projects with the boys in order to save themselves, in order to save their position. And I'm just never gonna do that. If it's harder to get it done with my girlfriends, too effing bad. I'd rather get it done with my girlfriends. They need me and I need them,
I'm so glad you almost dropped the F-bomb and not me.
I felt like you wanted to, and if I at least said it first,
I promised
then you would
not.
feel okay if you made that mistake.
That's it. We're going to open it up to questions. Please, anybody have a comment, a question, a thought? Yes. We have a mic right behind you. And let us know who of us you'd like to address.
I'd like to address Joy, I think your name was? Me? Yes. My name is Mary McGloin, and I have a weird background. I'm an actress and a quality assurance engineer. Well, I was a quality assurance engineer until I got fired recently for working remote too much as an actress as well. My friend and I co-wrote a web series called Tech Betties that's about women in tech. It's a comedy. And we're shooting our promo, which is kind of basically a short episode on this coming weekend. And I was curious, because you'd mentioned that you're planning a show, like Women in Tech, that's a comedy, but I was curious of the plot of it. Also, I wanted to know how you all felt about not only sexism and racism in the world of tech and entertainment, but ageism, because I find as a woman who's getting older in both fields that has sometimes come up. So, thank you.
Unfortunately, it's a little too early to talk about the plot. We don't even have our studio deal in place, but we've got some pretty big fish that are gonna be a part of it, and it's probably gonna be more women from college age to mid-20s, about kind of coming up. But it's just a little early to say. But I think there's plenty of room for shows about girls in tech, so don't worry about it.
And I would say that in tech, the recent research that came out in GitHub, right, about just the quality of the code that women write and that sits in GitHub being qualitatively better, as it turns out, than anyone else's. There was a research done recently that we compiled through an associate of the Athena Center that said that women over the age of 50 are twice as likely to be successful in startups within the first 5 years than younger than 50. And that's data that you don't see. That's data that VC's behavior doesn't reflect. That's data that you wouldn't think is true, and it is. And so I think that we have a lot of work to do, but the data is definitely on our side, because it turns out women who are wise and experienced perform better on many fronts. So I think getting the word out about that is probably what I would say is the most important thing. Other thoughts, questions? Yes. Yay.
Oh, she's so cute.
Miss Barry?
You also left off the time that Catherine, I think your partner, remember it was the thing about pregnant women not being able to work at the company. Remember that time?
What is your question?
You said question, comments, and thoughts.
That's my girl. Love you, baby. Love you, baby.
She's 100% right.
Yep, 100%.
So maybe you need to fix the omission.
Yeah. I'm a little shocked here to be able to comment. But yeah, it's part of, as Catherine, my co-founder, Apology Mom, has mentioned. Sorry, I'm doing an inside joke here. So Catherine, my co-founder.
Google Apology Mom and you'll find
Google
Catherine.
Apology Mom. But basically, my co-founder wrote the most popular article on Fortune last year. And it was actually in large part of where our brand started to arrive, I think, in everybody's inbox, because that thing went viral all over the world. I had people who I haven't spoken to in 20 years ping me and say, hey, I saw your name on this article in Fortune. And like my doorman talked to me about it. I mean, random people in the elevator. It was awesome. And what the article was about was really her realizing that as a mother of a young child, how horrible she had been to women in her 20s, right? As a young, up-and-coming executive that had the world on her shoulders and so much possibilities. And she was like, yeah, I was working so hard. I would be there until 7, 8 p.m. I constantly get annoyed with moms not being able to take meetings that were scheduled at 5 p.m. or why aren't they staying until late or, and that sort of thing. I think part of that article was really about, again, how we need to support each other and start from the early years and then, kind of really be together throughout the generations and be there for each other. And it's interesting because sometimes we have the biggest resistance to our model from HR managers between the age of 20 and 30, who haven't hit the kids' years yet. Yeah.
What I love most about that article, it's in there, but it's buried, and I just wish it was front and center, is that one of the examples that Catherine mentions of one of those interactions, right, was walking into the office of the editor-in-chief of Time.com at the time, and thinking that she was going to pitch her, and then dissuading herself from pitching her because she walked into the office and she noticed photos of her kids. And she determined that this person clearly is not going to be able to be serious. And then what isn't super, it's clear, but it's just, I wish it was profiled even heavier in the article, is that her name is Kathy, and she now works for Power to Fly. So, yeah.
And I would say be a mentor. I think it's twofold. Obviously, being a mentor is rewarding, and pick your girl assistant, pick the girl that you believe in. But also, when you have a baby, she's gonna cover for you. You taught her. She's no, you know what I mean? She's gonna be able to cover for you when you have to go home early because your baby's sick. So pick a good mentor that's loyal to you. Pick a good mentee who can be loyal to you. But I recently was in a situation to hire someone at a really high level, and I knew she'd have to move from New York to LA to take the job, and that she has 3 kids, and I refused to tell the network or the studio or anybody involved that I knew she had 3 kids. Because I know that they would be like, oh, she's gonna have to fly back so much, she's gonna have to, and I just kind of pretended they didn't exist so that she could get the job.
Yeah.
just in case it was.
Yeah. We're all, any other thoughts, questions, undying, really persistent things you want to say? One fun game to end this with. For those of you that saw in the preview of the movie, there is a little blurb, there's a little segment where the president of the college talks about who the Barnard woman is, and one of the things that she ends with is the Barnard woman is not afraid to cause trouble. We know that Jada is a Barnard student, but who wants to vote for who the other Barnard alum is on the panel, and then we'll wrap it up. It was obvious? You think it's obvious? Don't say it. You're not allowed. Did you already say? I already said. I'm not listening to my own panelists. All right, I need to, what?
That's my little partner in crime from
Cooper
Barnard.
Union
Raise your
niece.
hand, Nim.
Do it.
Nim, raise your hand. You're the... Yeah.
Oh, did you have a question?
Professor at Columbia.
Okay, that's even a better way to end. Are you just raising your hand to identify yourself, or you're raising your hand? Oh, okay. Oh, good. Okay, good. I have no other fun games to end the panel with. I ruined my own game. Any other thoughts, questions, and we'll wrap it up. Otherwise, thank you so much for staying this late on a Sunday night.